guess it's this one. Okay, it is now 6:30, and I call to order this meeting of the Lincoln County Planning Commission. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. The order of the events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will then be asked to explain the proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the Planning Commission members. I will then open the floor to public comment, first for the persons in support of the application, and then for the persons in opposition of the application. When you step up to the podium, please state your name and your address and speak into the microphone. Speakers are encouraged to only address new and relevant information pertaining to the item. Above all, please be cordial to all the meeting participants and refrain from side conversations and speaking out of turn, or you will be asked to leave. Lastly, decisions on rezoning applications will be scheduled for an additional public hearing during an upcoming joint County Board of Commissioners and City Council meeting. Not City Council meeting, excuse me. Decisions on conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. All right. I will do roll call. Commissioner Jongling.
Here.
Commissioner Instead.
Here.
Commissioner Scott.
Here.
Commissioner Poppins.
Here.
He's only going to be here on the last item. All right, if I can get a motion for the approval of the meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve in a second. I'll do roll call. Commissioner Jongling,
Yes.
Commissioner Instead,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. Now, if I can get approval of the meeting agenda. A motion.
I would so move.
I'll second, Scott.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Jongling,
Yes.
Commissioner Instead,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. Now, if I could get public input on any non-agenda items. Right, not seeing none, so we'll move on to old business. Any old business, Toby?
No old business, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right, let's get started. We have our public hearings.
Thank you. Good evening. Toby Brown representing County Planning. This first application for a public hearing before you this evening is a conditional use permit application. This is for a Class 1 major home occupation. Subject property is approximately 2.75 miles southwest of the city of Harrisburg. Subject property is 1.3 acres in size, as you can see. This property is zoned A1 agricultural, as is all surrounding or adjacent parcels. Subject parcel is improved with a single-family dwelling and 2 what I would call accessory buildings, structures on the property. That would be looking directly on the north side, one on that picture there. The applicant did submit an application, identified that he wanted to use one of the existing accessory buildings on the property for a Class 1 major home occupation. Specifically, the Class 1 major home occupation would be for an automotive cylinder head repair and sales. So staff did receive this application, did have some conversations with the applicant, did review the application. I'll address, as you're aware, within the zoning ordinance for this type of an application or a conditional use permit, there is 3 criteria that are supposed to be considered when acting upon such request. So staff did in the staff analysis address these, and I'll go through those real quickly briefly. The first is the impact of proposed use on adjacent properties shall be a major consideration. Staff noted that this predominant use of this area is agricultural. The nearest residence is approximately 180 feet away, and that would be to the northwest of the property. My understanding is that as a relation of this applicant, proposed use is compatible with adjacent properties and adjacent properties in the district as long as the required standard conditions are met. Predominant use of this property will continue to be residential. This is considered an accessory type of use to the property. The second item for consideration is measures shall be taken to ensure that this proposed use does not alter the general character of the area of the neighborhood. Staff identified that this proposed use is in an area with several similar residential acreages, cropland, and that the La Valley Township Maintenance Building is directly adjacent to this property. There are no special setbacks requirements for this type of a use to neighboring properties, and this use does not appear to negatively impact properties. Specifically because, as noted, is that the applicant intends to utilize an existing accessory building on the property, so there will be no construction, and per the ordinance or regulations, there cannot be any outside storage. Item number C for consideration is the effects of noise, odor, traffic, air, and water pollution, other negative factors shall be eliminated or controlled. Staff noted that as conditioned below, there is no unreasonable factors anticipated. Any public nuisances will be addressed upon the planning department receiving a complaint about the subject property. Other potential negative impacts are addressed through the standard conditions. So again, staff did review this application, did have some discussions with the property owner. Staff has visited the site and identified or does recommend approval of this application for the Class 1 major home occupation. Recommend that if approved, that there be the 11 conditions that were placed in the staff report. Those 11 conditions are standards that are within the zoning regulations. So staff didn't add any or create any of those or standards that need to be met for a Class 1 major home occupation. So it's just a reminder, in Lincoln County under the zoning regulations, every property is entitled, or every property zone A1 is entitled to a major or a home occupation. Mostly if it's a minor home occupation that occurs within the dwelling. If any of the activities occur outside of the dwelling in an accessory building, they are required to get a conditional use permit for a Class 1 major home occupation. There is a Class 2 major home occupation, but that's reserved for primarily agricultural related activities on agriculturally related properties. So with that, also of note is that staff did post this property. The applicant did send letters regarding the public hearing to adjacent properties within 500 feet. As of this time right now, staff has received no comments or calls or questions regarding this application. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time. Otherwise, the applicant is in attendance tonight.
Any questions for staff?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if we can have the applicant come up to the podium and explain their proposal in further detail.
Hi, my name is Nick German. I'm requesting a conditional use permit for major home occupation under the name Dynamic Cylinder Head. This request is to use an existing structure, approximately 26 by 32 feet. Part of this building would be used for the purpose of reconditioning, machining, and porting of automotive cylinder heads. All business and storage of customer cylinder heads would take place inside of the structure. Cylinder heads would be removed by the customer and brought to me, and no customer vehicles would reside on the property. A 2 square foot sign would identify the building. Depending on the portion of online sales, a sign near the driveway may not be necessary, but if it were, it would remain within the 4 square foot limit. Some customers would come from online orders and would have their parts delivered via ground shipping. A smaller portion of customers would come from the surrounding area. Traffic would be limited to light traffic, averaging roughly 2 vehicles per day from 8 to 5 p.m.
Nick, before we go any further, can you just state your address? I
Yeah, I'm
apologize.
sorry. 47270, 276th Street, Worthing, South Dakota.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, any questions for the applicant? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
I will now open the floor for comments in favor of the application. Seeing none, I will now ask for comments in opposition of the application. All right, and seeing none, I will now close the floor to public comment. Is there a motion on the application?
I'll make a motion to approve the application with the conditions listed.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We have a discussion? No? Pretty cut and clear. All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. No discussion. I will go ahead and take roll call. Commissioner Jongling,
Yes.
Commissioner Anstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. It passed. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. So the next item is item number 2. This is an application for a conditional use permit for a public utility facility, specifically a water treatment plant. The applicant and property owner is South Lincoln Rural Water. The subject property is approximately 6 miles south of the city of Worthing, as you can see. Subject parcel is 20 acres in size. Subject parcel, a portion of it is Zone C commercial, and then the remainder of it is zoned A1 agricultural. And for those of you that are familiar with this particular property and kind of an background explanation of why there's 3 applications, this property was separate properties. It was recently replatted into one, what I'll call a parent-type parcel, so that all the ownership is and all the parcel is one now instead of multiple parcels. Surrounding properties, as you can see, are all zoned A1 agricultural. Subject property is currently improved with the South Lincoln Rural Water Systems office and their headquarters. They do have some wells on the property, and they do some part of the water treatment and service delivery and sale from that location. The purpose of this application is that, and I'll let the representatives talk a little bit more about kind of the background and more specifics of it, but essentially they're upgrading their facilities and building new facilities for the different types of operations that they have. This first item, again, it would be for the water treatment plant. So staff did review this application, did have some discussions with the applicant, and as part of the staff report analysis, did review the 3 criteria for consideration of a conditional use permit. I'll go through those briefly. So the impact of the proposed use on adjacent properties, staff identified that this predominant use of this area is agricultural. The nearest residence is approximately 200 feet away, and that would be to the northeast of the property. The property has been developed since 1980 when South Lincoln Rural Water started delivering water to its members. The proposed use is compatible with adjacent properties and other properties in the district as long as the required conditions are met. The predominant use of this property will continue to be a public utility facility. Measures shall be taken to ensure the proposed use does not alter general character of the area neighborhood. The site of this proposed use is an area predominantly cropland with some scattered residential. There are no special setbacks for this type of use to neighboring properties. The intensification of this use is really, again, the upgrade of the facility. It does not appear likely to negatively impact properties in the area or neighborhood if they were to be developed in the future. Item number C for consideration, the effects of noise, odor, traffic, air, and water pollution, other negative factors. Staff identified that there's no negative factors anticipated from the proposed use. Any public nuisance violations will be addressed upon the planning department receiving a complaint about the subject property. All other negative impacts are addressed through the recommended conditions. Again, this property has been utilized for this type of a use since approximately 1980. In a review of the staff files, staff could identify that there's been no complaints lodged against the operation or the location or the facility. A little bit of background is that, as you are aware, the county's had 2 zoning ordinances, and prior to the current zoning ordinance, there wasn't really a provision for a public utility facility within the regulations, so that necessitated the need to rezone to commercial for a portion of it. 2 years ago, we did have some expansion of it that staff considered to be a continuation of the existing permit that was on there, but because this seems to be more a change or an upgrade of the facility, staff did have them go through the process individually for the improvements. So staff does recommend approval of this request for the water treatment plant with the 8 conditions that were identified in the staff analysis. As is always noted, staff did post this property in accordance with the ordinance, and the applicant did send notification 3 times with all of these applications to neighboring properties within 500 feet. As of this meeting, staff has received no comments, concerns, or questions regarding this application. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
brief me quickly, if you can, on the necessity to have 3 separate applications though for this, please?
So it started out as, again, 3 separate properties. And so when we originally took it, that's what we received. And then as staff, we felt that, at that time, it would be best to proceed with them as 3 separate applications because they're essentially 3 different activities. But what I would say to you is that all 8 conditions are the same throughout all 3 different ones, so.
Thank you. I briefly went through that, and everything is repetitive, and I would have appreciated the brevity of handling this in one motion.
Yep.
Thank you.
But we did take $250 from them 3 times, so we felt they deserved that. Felt they deserved the
Not
public
exactly
hearing
proud of
before.
that.
So, yeah.
Toby, I have a question. So, as far as the zoning, on it, you feel it's okay to leave the balance of it in A1 agricultural? You don't feel like we should rezone the balance of it before you do, or move forward with it?
No, I mean, the use that's allowed is allowable in all those districts, so
It
we're
is.
okay with that, yeah.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Okay, if I can have the applicant come up now to the podium, explain. If we can get your name and address.
Very good. Eric Stearns, DGR Engineering. I actually live in Lincoln County, so 27897 472nd Avenue, Worthing, South Dakota. I'm representing South Lincoln Rural Water tonight. I'm the engineer on the project. We'll just talk about the water treatment plant right now, since it looked like I get to do this 2 other times. The water treatment plant will be a 3 million gallon a day water treatment plant. It'll be expandable to 6 million gallons a day. It's going to use iron and manganese pressure filters to filter the water, and really provide a better product to South Lincoln's customers. 3 million gallons a day today will take care of today's demands. 6 million gallons a day could take care of 20 years, 40 years, we're not sure what, or 10 years, we'll see. But as the county continues to grow, we plan for quite a bit of expansion in that plant, so. That's what the water treatment plant's for.
Any questions for the applicant?
Have you spoken with the road district or anyone in the area? Because I imagine if the expanded facilities, you're going to see a lot more traffic, past construction.
The property has been replatted and approved by the county, and that plat was signed by the county. Has any other conversation been had? No other conversations have been had. I think the increased traffic will be limited to chemical deliveries. And we've got quite a bit of storage and chemical on site of chlorine and other chemicals that'll need for treatment. Other than that, it'll be typical staff traffic, on a daily basis. So I don't anticipate a significant amount of increased traffic at that site.
Thank you.
Is the access gonna be off the county road then?
Yes, both yeah, there's 2 exits there.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I guess I got one question. It always comes back to me when you mention the chemicals and the chlorine and whatever chemicals you're using. I didn't see on there what the closest residence was to there, but have they done an analysis? So if that chlorine tank, how big is it gonna be and what's the plume if that thing would go up to impact any of the neighbors?
So there will be gas chlorine cylinders, no more than what's already there today. And that is actually in a fire protected room, so it's a precast concrete wall with a block wall on the inside, and then it has a sprinkler system to suppress any fire or anything that would happen there.
Okay.
So
So you're not expanding that storage?
the amount of chlorine capacity really isn't changing
Okay.
a whole lot, so.
Any other questions? Okay, all right. I will now open the floor for comments in favor of the application. Seeing none, I will now ask for comments in opposition of the application. All right, seeing none, I will close the floor to public comment. And is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All right, with no discussion, I will do roll. Commissioner Jongling,
Yes.
Commissioner Instead,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. Number 1, down. Pass.
Okay, this next item is an application for a conditional use permit for a public utility facility, specifically this is a pump station. The applicant for this item and property owner is South Lincoln Rural Water. And I'll be brief on this one, but again, the property location is approximately 6 miles southwest of the city of Worthing. Subject property is zoned A1 agricultural and C commercial. Subject property is improved with an existing water treatment facility operations. And this is the proposed operation for this one, but specifically be for the pump station facility. So staff did review this application and did identify, and I won't go through the criteria because they identified for the same criteria because of the property location. But staff does recommend approval of this request for the pump station public utility facility with the 8 conditions that were listed below. And I guess, again, we did post a property and the applicant did send an additional letter out to the property owners. And I guess I would follow up on that is that I think it's appropriate to do these as 3 separate applications because they're 3 different types of activities. I think we would have gotten lost in the third item is essentially an elevated water storage facility, which wouldn't really do anything. But these other 2 potential items might have some noise or different types of operations associated with them. This will allow staff now and down the road to make sure that they operate within whatever conditional use permits appropriate to that use on the site. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Any questions? No? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Go back.
Eric Stearns, DGR Engineering, representing South Lincoln Rural Water. My address is 27897 472nd Avenue, Worthing, South Dakota. So yeah, this second application is for the pump station at the water treatment plant. So after we've treated the water, it'll go to the third application, the ground storage reservoirs. From there, it'll get pumped out. The initial pumping capacity will be about 3,000 gallons a minute. Ultimate capacity, there'll be 5,000 gallons a minute. So we've got some space for expansion there as well. This will also be a precast building. I should mention that the construction timeline right now is starting later this summer and then continuing for the construction window is about 3 years. And that's mostly predicated on delivery schedules of equipment, of major equipment. So, and that would be for all 3 facilities that we're going to talk about. Other than that, there's not much else going on at that high service pump building. So, any questions?
Questions?
I have one question. I know we're identifying this as 3 different projects, but could any of the projects go without the counterpart being approved?
No.
Thank you.
Any more? Okay.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
just had one question with when you said the pumping, is this connected to Lewis and Clark at all? Do you guys get any water from them that you'd be storing there and?
The system is connected to Lewis and Clark, the rural water system, but at this facility, no Lewis and Clark water will be there.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. All
Thank you.
right. I will now open the floor to comments in favor of the application. Seeing none, I will ask for the comments in opposition. Seeing none, I will close the floor to public comment and ask for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, I will do roll call. Commissioner Jongling,
Yes.
Commissioner Instead,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. That one passed.
Okay, this next item is a conditional use permit for a public utility facility for ground storage reservoirs. Applicant property owner is South Lincoln Rural Water. Again, this site is approximately 6 miles southwest of the city of Worthing. Subject property is partially zoned C commercial and A1 agricultural. And again, at the time of these applications, there was separate parcels that these applications would have been on. So that was primarily the necessitation for the 3 separate applications that were submitted. Subject property is improved with the water treatment facility office operations. This particular application is for the ground storage reservoirs. This could be up to 2 1 million gallon ground storage reservoir applications. So staff did review this application. I did have some discussions with the applicant. Went through the staff analysis, which I won't go through with this application. But staff does recommend approval of this 2 ground storage reservoirs with the 8 conditions that are listed. Again, staff did post a property. The applicant did send a 3rd letter to adjacent property owners. As of this meeting, we haven't had any comments, concerns, or questions from any of the adjacent property owners or anyone for that matter. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Eric Stearns, DGR Engineering, representing South Lincoln Rural Water, 27897 472nd Avenue, Worthing, South Dakota. So this 3rd application is for the ground storage reservoirs. So after the water is treated at the water treatment plant, it gets delivered to the ground storage reservoirs. From there, it gets pumped out to the high service pump building to distribution. This allows for the treatment plant to be able to operate separately from the high service pump building. These tanks will be approximately 50 feet tall by 70 foot in diameter. They will be a glass fused to steel bolted tank. And the service life on those is approximately 50 years. Yeah, that's the essence of that application. Any questions?
No? Okay. All right. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
All right, I will open the floor now to comments in favor of the application. Seeing none, I will open the floor to comments in opposition. And I will now close the floor to public comment. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve jungling.
Second, Scott.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right,
Nope.
with no discussion, we will go ahead and do roll. Commissioner Jungling,
Yes.
Commissioner Instead,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
Commissioner Hogan is also a yes. Pass.
You guys didn't even have to get up and say a word. You're welcome for that.
Okay, this next application is a conditional use permit for a public utility facility, not water related. This is for a fiber hut. The applicant is Alliance Communication. The property owner is Robert and Joan Lear. Subject property is approximately 2,000 feet south of the city of Canton. Subject property will maintain to be, it's approximately 160 acre parcel. The Lears live in this facility, in this area here, and the proposed location would be up here in the corner. That's a little bit better there, but, so the Lears do own a single-family dwelling on this property, which is essentially a separate parcel, but they are the owners of both parcels. Subject property, again, is zoned A1 agricultural. All surrounding and adjacent properties are A1 agricultural. Purpose of this would be for 11 foot by 20 foot fiber hut, and this would be for use with Alliance Communications. So staff did receive this application, review this application, did have some discussions with the applicant. As part of the staff analysis, the criteria for approval of a conditional use permit, staff did identify within the staff report. The first criteria is the impact of proposed use on adjacent properties is a major consideration. Staff identified that the predominant use of this area is agriculture. The nearest residence is approximately 700 feet away, and that would be the Lears property. Proposed use should be compatible with adjacent properties and other properties in the district as long as the required recommended conditions are met. Second criteria is that measures shall be taken to ensure the proposed use does not alter the general character of the area of the neighborhood. Staff identified that the site of the proposed use is an area of predominantly cropland with some scattered residential. There is a cemetery that would be kitty corner adjacent across the road. There are no special setback requirements for this type of use to neighboring properties. The use does not appear to likely to negatively impact properties in the area of the neighborhood if they're to be developed in the future. The third criteria is effects of noise, odor, traffic, air, and water pollution. Staff identified that there's no negative factors are anticipated with the proposed use. Any public nuisance violations will be addressed upon the planning department receiving a complaint about the subject property. All other negative impacts are addressed through the recommended conditions. As you're aware, last year we did, I believe, have 2 of these applications from Alliance Communications. The second one that I'm more familiar with was the location along or on the Spring Creek Golf Course, and that has been constructed and it is utilized by the applicants. So staff does recommend approval of this application to construct and operate the fiber hut. If approved, staff does recommend the 7 conditions that were listed in the staff analysis. As noted, staff did post the property, and the applicant did send notification within 500 feet of the property. As of this time tonight, staff has received no comments, questions, or concerns regarding this application. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
Any questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
If we can have the applicant come up to the podium and state your name and address first, please.
Andy Holscher, Alliance Communications, 48229 253rd in Garrettson, South Dakota.
Okay.
So the conditional use permit is for an additional fiber hut south of Canton to feed the residents in South Lincoln County. So we've got the ongoing project in North Lincoln County. This is a continuation to go south of Worthing and south of Canton to, I think we're about 16 miles south of Canton.
Anybody have any questions for the applicant? No? Okay, all right, thank you. All right. I will open the floor for comments in favor of this application. Seeing none, I will open the floor to comments in opposition of the application. Seeing none, I will close the floor for public comment and ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve with the 7 conditions. Scott?
Second, Ensted.
All right, there is a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I will do roll call. Commissioner Jongling,
Yes.
Commissioner Instead,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins.
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is also a yes. There you go.
Thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, I'm going to
Yes.
recuse myself for this item.
Okay. And I believe, are we going to get Commissioner Green on? Okay, perfect.
I'm on. Thanks, Wendy.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So this next item is a conditional use permit. This is specifically to exceed the 1,500 square foot requirement for an accessory building. The applicant is requesting 6,440 square feet. Applicant is William Brunner. Property owner is William and Aaron Brunner. Subject property is approximately 250 feet west of the city of Harrisburg, or essentially across the highway there. Subject property is zoned rural residential. It is within a cul-de-sac, and this is the Baker Crossing Golf Course would be along the rear side of it there. But this particular property is off of a cul-de-sac off of the county highway there, or Louise Avenue essentially. Again, subject property is zoned RR rural residential. The houses are on that property are also zoned RR rural residential, and the golf course and some of the other adjacent rural residential residential properties are zoned A1 agricultural. Subject property is improved with an approximately a 7,000 square foot single family dwelling on the property. The applicant has, again, submitted this request to exceed the 1,500 square foot, which is a requirement of a property zoned rural residential under the zoning regulations. This would be approximately where the proposed building is proposed on the property. So again, off of a cul-de-sac, the house would be accessed off of there. This property, or the proposed accessory building would be accessed off of the existing drive off of Baker Circle. The staff did receive the application, did review the application, did have some discussion with the applicant. I'll go through quickly. There is, again, 3 criteria for a conditional use permit for this type within the regulations. Again, the first criteria would be the impact on adjacent properties. Staff identified that the proposed use of the area is residential. The nearest residence approximately 30 feet away, and that would be the property that would be adjacent to what I would call the south. The proposed use is an accessory building. There are no other accessory buildings in this area. But it was stated by the applicant that the structure will be built out of materials matching the single-family dwelling on the property. This accessory building should be generally compatible with adjacent properties since the size is less than the single-family dwelling on the subject parcel. Criteria B is measures shall be taken to ensure that the proposed use does not alter the general character of the area of the neighborhood. Staff identified that the site of the proposed use is in a fully developed residential subdivision. The accessory building should not alter the general character of the neighborhood as long as required setbacks are met. And that is really the only criteria that there is for an oversized accessory building. The use of the property will continue after this to be residential. Item number C is the effects of noise, odor, traffic, air and water pollution, other negative factors shall be eliminated or controlled. Staff identified that there's no commercial business or storage will be allowed in the proposed accessory building at any time. Any public nuisance would be addressed by the planning department receiving a complaint about the subject property. All outdoor lighting will need to be directed downward onto the property. Lighting must be designed to be fully shielded and fully cut off to prevent light pollution off-site. Again, this is for what I would call permanent lighting on the structure. So I know that I did have an email from the applicant about Christmas lighting and things like that. We don't regulate that. It would just be the permanent lighting that would be on the structure. So staff did review the application, as I mentioned. Staff does recommend approval of this request to construct the 6,440 square foot accessory building with the 6 conditions that were listed within the staff report. And again, these 6 conditions are standard conditions that we place on all accessory, what I'll call oversized accessory buildings. So staff did post the property, and the applicant did send letters within 500 feet of the property. As of tonight, staff has received no comments, questions, or concerns regarding the application. I believe staff did put on your, before you this evening, that we did receive, I take that back, we did receive a letter of support from a neighbor, so we did include that in front of you this evening. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for staff at this time.
You have questions?
Just confirming there are no other accessory buildings in this vicinity at present?
Correct. Correct. Okay, thank you.
If I can have the applicant come up to the podium. What's your name and address, please?
Hi, I'm William Brunner, 47196 Baker Circle, Sioux Falls. So yeah, we would like to put up this building, my wife and I. And I'll mention, our property is, we had bought 2 adjacent lots. So even though it's a large structure, it's smaller, comparable or smaller to the houses around there. So it is 2 buildings, but on 2 different full-size lots. And I started with conversations with my neighbors and our homeowners association just to make sure everybody was on board with it. No one had any objections before we proceeded to work with the designer, and worked extensively to make sure that we were going to construct something that's going to look very aesthetically pleasing and complement our home, and not be something anyone would find objectionable. Yeah, we reviewed the conditions. Everything certainly seems satisfactory to me. Certainly have no intentions of using it in any sort of commercial sense or any sort of living quarters or anything. It's just going to be used for extra space for me. I work on and collect classic cars, so it's just going to be a big man cave shop, that sort of thing. Oh, and as far as the accessory structures in use in the surrounding area, there aren't any on the cul-de-sac, but if a quick drive a quarter mile in any direction, you'll see several other accessory buildings that are around, some quite large, so I'm not sure if you're just talking about the cul-de-sac. No, there aren't any other accessory structures on our cul-de-sac, that's true.
And you wouldn't be adding any more access to the access you've already got? This
No, when we built,
would get you there?
No, sir. When we bought the second lot and we built an addition onto our existing property, we did add a second driveway at that time, and this current building would have ingress and egress, a driveway stemming off of that existing driveway.
Yeah, I see that second driveway, that's what I was curious about. That's what you'll use to access it.
Correct.
But we got a letter from Steve and Elizabeth Feldhaus. Which direction do they,
South.
south
They're
of
the
you?
immediate closest neighbor to this.
Okay, okay.
Yep. And that's the letter in favor?
That's a letter of, yeah,
Okay.
they seem to be pretty happy with your plans. They're comfortable with it, so, okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Commissioner Green, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. I will now open the floor for any comments in favor. Toby, do you want me to read this letter, or? Okay. I will read this letter that we did get, dated April 20th, to whom it may concern. This letter serves to acknowledge that Clint and Aaron Bruner have explained their proposed plan to build a structure that will house a number of garage stalls to accommodate their car collection on their property adjacent to ours. We are comfortable with the plan as it has been presented to us. Thank you, Steve Feldhaus and Elizabeth Feldhaus. Are there any other comments in favor? In favor? Please come up to the podium. And state your name and address, please.
I am Steve Feldhaus,
Oh,
47197 Baker Circle.
okay.
So yeah, we're in favor. We've talked with the Bruners about this. The only question I had is that I got the letter about this meeting tonight, and I was unsure about the square footage of the actual building. We were under the assumption that it was 1,500 square feet, but there's 6,400 square feet listed, so I'm not sure how that, where that all comes from. Question number 2 is, I'm at the back of the cul-de-sac, so we're going to be affected the most by this other than the other neighbors. You just want to know how long the project's going to take. And then we kind of on a little bit of slope, so I'm interested in knowing what the construction company is going to do to protect our property from mud, litter, debris. We get the north wind, so if there's any debris, it's going to blow into my property. And finally, speaking out of experience, I lived in Omaha on a road that was asphalt just like this one, and my neighbor built a large addition. Construction company beat up the road, and so there was a lot of concern of who was going to pay for that. All of the neighbors had to take the construction company to litigation because they said they weren't at fault. So I just want to know ahead of time if something happens to that road, who's going to be responsible to repair it?
Okay. All right, so the first question is about how many square feet. So they're requesting 6,440 square feet. Okay, so it was going to exceed the 1,500 square feet that is allowable now. So it's going to be 6,440 square feet.
So my understanding is that's going to be the building then, not the 1,500.
Correct.
You can build up to 1,500. Anything you want to go over and above that, you have to get a conditional use permit. So that's
Yes.
what they're requesting.
Okay, all right.
Now, as far as when it will start and how long, we will need to bring Mr. Bruner back up and ask him those questions.
Okay.
So if you can have us,
Actually,
Oh, you have-
Steve, if I may, given your confusion as to what he was actually requesting, does that affect your letter of support for it at this present time?
Well, we still support the Bruners. I was just I didn't we had no idea that it was going to be 6,400 square feet. We were always under the assumption, and this came from a discussion with Dr. Bruner, that the building would be at least 1,500 square feet. So when we got this letter in the mail, we like, wow, this is a little
this is
different
not a
than,
little shed.
this was a little different than what we understood it to be.
Okay. Thank you for
So
that.
that was my
clar-
confusion.
Thank you for that clarity.
So that does it, but to
My point,
piggyback on Commissioner Poppins here, does that affect your support for the project?
No,
As far as square footage?
No,
goes?
they're great neighbors, and it's their property. They can do whatever they want. And believe me, this thing's gonna look like their house, which is absolutely beautiful. We just want to be informed.
Yep.
You know, I want to know, like I said, I'm at the end of the cul-de-sac. I'm going to be affected by this for quite a while.
So one question for you, who's in charge of your cul-de-sac? I assume it's your homeowners association, or
Yes,
is that how you
Baker
get?
Crossing.
And
I don't know who specifically.
so how does that go when there's improvements and things that need to be done? Do they split them evenly amongst you, or how does that work?
Well, you know, I'm new to the neighborhood. I've been there about 3-4 years, so there's nothing like this has even happened before. I just pay my balance to the homeowners association, so that's it.
I
Because
just
from
want
our standpoint, I mean, really the road, I mean, we can ask the questions, but it's not, it's really
It's-
outside of any
yeah,
of our
the-
authority. It's
Yeah,
within
I
your-
just want to make sure that it's
Yep.
brought forward, because I had this experience in Omaha, and it was ugly. And
it's
and
out,
neighbors were mad at neighbors, and it's like, I don't want to go there. So I think it needs to be out in front, because there's going to be a lot of heavy equipment coming through there, and it's an asphalt road. And where I lived in Omaha, it was an asphalt road, and that road got beat up pretty bad. And so I just want this on record that I brought it up.
yeah.
I'm not in opposition or anything, it just needs to be brought up.
The timeline, though, other than within the time of a conditional use permit, does not, nothing that we regulate on that.
Got it. Okay.
And so for us to really even discuss that is not pertinent in my
Okay.
mind.
Yeah.
What we're talking about, should he be allowed to build a structure over the 1,500? And then once that permit is granted, he has a certain period to operate under that. He can come back and get an extensions and ask for that kind
Oh,
of stuff.
okay, sure.
But as far as when he's gonna build it within that time frame, I think that's really outside of our jurisdiction. Now, if you
That's
have
fine.
covenants and stuff in your.
No,
development,
you know, I don't,
Yeah,
I've never been to a meeting like this before. These are just my wife and I's questions. We want to be informed.
sure. Great conversation, with your neighbors, you can sure chat with them.
Yeah, we have,
Yep.
but the letter here kind of threw us off a little bit.
Sure.
That's why I decided I better come here tonight.
Well, thank you for coming.
Okay.
Any, pardon? I don't think it's necessary. I think you can speak with each other on
Civil
that.
stuff. We're not crossing that line.
Any other comments in favor? Any comments in oppose? All right, I will now close the floor to public comment, and can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve so we can have a little bit of discussion.
I'll second Scott.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open for discussion.
A question for staff. This originally was 2 lots and has been joined after the original plating, or can you clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, it was originally 2 lots, but they were replatted into one, so it's 1 lot now.
Yep.
And the next question you might ask, well, building eligibilities, well, it's zoned rural residential, there was no building eligibilities on it, so.
No,
Yep.
but if it was a lot of, they had gone through that, platted it, there was. It just, the size of the, maybe more lean toward allowing something like this in my perspective. Just trying to get a bearing for the size of the lot and perspective to the neighborhood.
It's 2 lots, so 2.1 acres, yep.
So it could have been a separate lot with a separate house
Correct.
and of infinite size, or what would the size of the house possibly have been? could it have been, what, the max?
We don't have a minimum or maximum for residential structures in the county.
Okay, just as long as it meets the setbacks of the, yep,
Yep.
okay.
Okay. Any other discussion?
In the end, I'm going to support this because I have faith that the individual will put this up in a manner that's consistent with the neighborhood. But with that said, there's no requirement by this conditional use permit for that to happen. This comes down to an individual circumstance, and I believe that the individual has the desire and the requirement because it'll affect his property as well, to do so. I'm not exactly thrilled about it, because this is such a large accessory building. And what that can lead to is operations for the next owner trying to do something that may be not as favorable as what the intention of this property owner is currently. But I am going to trust on this one myself, but we'll see how it goes.
Any other comments? Commissioner Green, you have any comments?
No, the only comment I have in going through this process is understanding that, I appreciate that the applicant has engaged the neighbors, the homeowners association, assuming that if the homeowners association had any major concerns that, typically, these are those engagements that they would come out against it. So, because of that, I will also be in favor of it.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, we have a motion and a second, and we did some discussion, so let's take a roll call. Commissioner Jungling? No, he recused. Commissioner Instead?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Poppins?
Yes.
And Commissioner Hogan is a yes. So it passed. Good luck.
I just need to get his phone number so I can tell him when I'm golfing to put the cars away, so hit him with my golf ball.
Don't
All
put your
right.
name on the ball.
All right, Toby, new business?
When I see him with his hat, I'm like, I could be water. I put it in my golf ball.
Just put Jerry Jungling on it next time.
What's that?
Just put Jerry Jungling.
Commissioner Jungling?
So for first item of new business, I don't have an update for you as of yet. The Board of Commissioners did receive an appeal, again, for the, what I'll call the dairy project, and conditional use permit that was appealed to them. They have tabled that item until, I believe, May 23rd this month for consideration again. So hopefully next month I'll have an answer for you, whatever that determination is. And then if there's any questions on that, otherwise, the second item I have for you tonight on the new business would be the comprehensive plan update. And so this will be the first engagement that the Planning Commission has had regarding the comprehensive plan update. Again, the County Commissioners has contracted through the Planning Department with Stantec Engineering to do an update to the existing 2025 comprehensive plan. As you've heard me say before, is that Lincoln County has had 3 comprehensive plans. We've had zoning in place since 1971. The current comprehensive plan was adopted in 2005. It did have an update in 2011 to the goals, policies, and the future land use map, but in substantial, it remains what it was in 2005. We did have a stakeholder meeting this morning up in the city of Harrisburg where we invited all the townships, invited all the cities, invited some state officials, elected officials, and so that was a good turnout. A lot of it, though, is the continual questions that I have regarding this process is this necessary? And I say, well, it's a once every 20-year process, so some of us might not be around the next time that this is ever considered adopted, so I consider it pretty important from that aspect of it. But the second most important part about it is that what the public sees and what you guys have been engaged in for months and your terms on here has been like tonight. Zoning, your zoners, you go through the process and we're held to what the ordinances are, what the rules and regulations are. This process is a lot more fun than that, because this process is about vision, it's about goals, it's about what we want to see when Lincoln County grows up. There is never really a final to this. We're going to continue to grow up, but there's a lot of things that you guys know as frontline with on a monthly basis with growth and development that's been occurring in the county. And so, like I like to say, is that you don't have to go too far around to people that would pay to have the problems that we have. But with that, there are opportunities and there are issues that we need to address, and that's really the goal of this process. The second part about this is that staff and the Board of Commissioners is committed to making this a ground-up plan. They don't want this plan to be in a vacuum. They want this plan to be bottom-up from the citizens, the taxpayers of Lincoln County. That our role in this process is to listen to what they want, our consultant to do that, and to come up with a recommendation for a plan that we will eventually adopt that is what the public wants. And then our role in this process is to make sure it's implemented, administered correctly and properly. And then the second part that I like to tell the commissioners is that we'll be accountable for it too. And so that's all part of government, and that's all part of planning, and that's all part of process, is that since 1971, when Lincoln County adopted its first comprehensive plan, they've had a vision, they've had a plan, they've had a CIP associated with it. I think it's important that we continue that process and continue it, update it, and go from there. We've learned things, we know what not to do, we know what we want to do. So, but that's for the public to engage with us. So tonight, our consultant from Stantec, and they'll introduce themselves to you, as well as we do have Tom from South Lincoln Rural Water that's going to do a presentation, not so much about the three items that we had tonight, but more in general about water service within the county. And then Terry Floyd, the county highway superintendent, is here as well tonight. And he's going to communicate to you kind of questions and some background on kind of the transportation network within the county. And then I hope that you guys listen, but I hope you ask questions and get some perspective, because the things that we do impact them with the growth and with the development and stuff like that. So with that, I'll kick it off to Tom and Katie, and they can go through some stuff. So.
Sure, Madam Chair, Commissioners, we just have to set up quick here, just get the PowerPoint set. So, when we're ready to go.
No, they don't. No, but you can do this. Oh, okay. Okay. Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. Tom Berry, Senior Planner with Stantec. A pleasure to visit with you this evening. Here's my associate, Katie Kemet, up here as well. She'll be offering some of the presentation later as well. So really, the agenda tonight before you is to talk about the comprehensive plan and introduction of it. We're also going to have folks from Rural Water and Transportation mid-presentation to talk about rural water and transportation issues. Also then walk through the Phase 1 survey results that are already posted, or excuse me, the results aren't posted yet, but folks are, responding to the community survey that's online. And then also we'll have that, and then we will break. We will stop recording, and then we're going to have a working session with the Planning Commission members to walk through some, working maps just to get some more dialogue. So with that, really, let's just start with what is comprehensive planning. Really, what we decided to do is just show the South Dakota state statutes, and I'm just going to read these verbatim for folks. Really, per South Dakota state statute, the purpose of a comprehensive county plan
shall be for the purpose of protecting and guiding the physical, social, economic, and environmental development of the county, to protect the tax base, to encourage a distribution of population or mode of land utilization that will facilitate the economical and adequate provisions of transportation, roads, water supply, drainage, sanitation, education, recreation, and other public requirements, to lessen governmental expenditures, and to conserve and develop natural resources. That's a lot. There's a lot in that statement nonetheless. And that's why you do comprehensive plans every 20 years, perhaps. So with that, really, the plan contents, as Toby indicated, this is a copy or a small little snapshot of the existing comprehensive plan itself. What is in your county comprehensive plan right now? There's an introduction and a purpose and the use of the plan itself. There's a description of the study area. There's a big section about the demographic conditions, population projections, the local economics. There's an element of it with infrastructure, transportation, the water and the wastewater facilities, utilities, stormwater management. Small section about the schools, parks, and open space. There's a growth area analysis. Also look at existing land use itself. And then the last two primary sections we'll talk about a little bit later are the planning policy frameworks, which really has the goals, the planning areas, and the policies. And lastly, then the plan implementation considerations, really what do you do from those goals? And again, in the months ahead, you'll get more intimately involved with this. If you have a goal to do X, well, then how do you implement goal X, really is what that is. The great news is you already have some really good plans in place that really help supplement and complement your existing and now your update to your county comprehensive plan. As folks be aware, you do have your joint county hazard mitigation plan that was updated in 2017. It's my understanding now that's in the process of, I think it's going out for public comment here next month, I believe. Are also we have our folks from Transportation Highways here, so they recently updated the Lincoln County Master Transportation Plan, because that is a driver of transportation, of course, to how things are developed. And lastly, there was several years ago, the Lincoln County Master Drainage Plan. As you recall, myself and Kent Torvey, the engineer, we were involved, with that. That really deals with the flooding concerns, the drainage concerns that folks have experienced here in Lincoln County. So with that, again, here's the plan contents, but I wanted to focus on those bottom two, really the primary purpose and discussion of, the items before you tonight and the months ahead, as well as the county community survey that we've conducted, also a phase 2 survey that we're doing, and just the engagement that we have with stakeholders really goes down to that public policy framework. What are the goals? What are the objectives towards what you want your community to look like ultimately? Here's a quick process timeline of where we are. Stantec was secured contract with the county back in January. In March, we were out here of visiting with folks. We had several general public meetings to really kind of go through Planning 101, Comprehensive Plan 101, basically what we're doing tonight. Then again, as Toby indicated, we had a really robust conversation with key stakeholders. A number of the cities were there, the township, state representatives. Really what this is broken down to, if you can see, is really there's tasks 2, 3, and 4 is really what's the driver here. There's the plan content itself. Again, all the public information that we're receiving what does it do? We're getting comment that helps drive for the county board to make informed decisions regarding those goals, policies, and objectives. You're going to overhear that again and again, and during our working session, goals, policies, and objectives. There's the robust community engagement that we've been doing through the community survey, a second survey that's going to be out probably after Memorial Day, as well as engagement with you folks as well, primary stakeholders, and also back to the county board in the months ahead. And then again, as I said, for the 4th time, goals, policies will be new here starting in June, July, August, with the intent is to have this approved by the county board in November. Again, we'll see if it stays to November, but we're actually ahead of schedule right now, which is nice. With that, I wanted to pause, and we're going to shift here for a moment, and folks from rural water and transportation, we're going to get up and talk about it in part because transportation and rural water really drive the economics behind what you can and can't do in the county. So with that, I'll pause. Tom Roush, General Manager, South Lincoln Rural Water. As you can see, do you want my address on this too?
No.
Okay. As you can see, we're planning for the future. With the new pumping plant, the storage, we're also building a water tower that's going to hold 1 million gallons. We're adding a booster station. We're putting in a new control system so that we can control these entities in a much more efficient way. As I went to the meeting this morning and they described the areas of activity, and there's basically three. There's the stuff that's just adjacent to and south of Sioux Falls that is coming this way. Our preparation is for probably 10 to 12 years down the road when it slowly starts creeping in or south of the Klondike or 276th. Then it gets down to 18 and we look at that boundary between the Klondike and Highway 18 is our prime focus right now. The other focus would be up by this city of T, west of. I think Robin isn't here tonight, but he's got Lincoln County Rural Water as a major development that is just east of Highway 17 in south. What is that, Mike? The road leading out of 106, right? And he's got a major development going on there. I believe there's 60 to 80 homes in there. We've got a smaller one just to the west of that on the east side of 17 that Dick Peters is doing, and we're kind of focused on that. But our long-range plan is to prepare for the growth that comes this direction. We see the Highway 18 corridor as they get this into a 4-lane road is going to be a prime area for commercial growth. The dairy is always active, as everybody knows. And then south of 18, I think is still has some time that it's going to be that it's going to take for it to hit some growth down there. I'd be happy to answer any questions. You've always got one, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, your operation and what you represent is a key factor of what goes on in the rural areas as far as change, whether it's commercial or residential. I know on the aspect of commercial, we talk over and over again about water suppression for fire and things like that. Is your expansion that you're preparing for 10 to 20 years, preparing for that kind of growth in certain areas such as the 18 corridor and where structures can have water suppression systems included in their build? Or is that still something that is going to be something that we have to be considerate of depending on what that building is going to be used for?
That's a double-edged sword for us.
You know I like those trick questions.
Yeah, I know it. I think Hogendorn's requested fire suppression from us, and we told them no. And here's the reason why. If you look at that corridor along 18, we were having problems delivering water to north of Canton ever since the system was built, I think. And so you start giving fire suppression, and I know that it's very short term. And it's for a very specific short term, but it upsets the whole rural water concept. In that if all of a sudden I'm doing 400 gallons a minute from a 12-inch pipe, everybody else that is hooked to that 12-inch pipe suffers. Some may be without water. You don't know what all the needs are. Eric has cattle.
You're exactly, well, that's why I lead to that question is because as we're starting to make the changes of
Yeah.
what are kind of structures
Yeah.
or what uses, we need to know if that's going to be one of the things that's going to become.
We'd love to, but the
The cost to do that's probably
The
prohibitive.
cost to do it is prohibitive. I mean, you can't even fathom that. We took a look at a 12-inch line across from Highway 11 over to Lewis and Clark is on 270, yeah, 275th, and what's the avenue? 468? 468, just that pipeline, and that's what will loop the Lewis and Clark to our system, and then we can manage a really vast area. But it's about 120,000 a mile right now, and there's 8 miles involved, 8 or 9 miles, so that's part of the issues is cost. We fund all of these projects through the sale of water. And I'm proud to say that our water today is no more than when I came 12 years ago,
Per 1,000 you're talking.
for 1,000, yes.
Second question is does the board appreciate the growth in the rural areas, or is it considered a double-edged sword because as a growth, you've had to make vast improvements? Or should be, we focusing, an initial intent of the current comprehensive plan is to encourage growth in and close to municipalities that can provide those types of services? Do you want to go on the record? If you choose not to answer, I understand. But what is the board's, thought on all this growth? Because again, as you refer to, it's been creeping in and around Sioux Falls, Harrisburg. You're exactly right. That area is filling up. The rural eligibilities are getting less and less as farmers do decide to sell them and such. And it's going to keep pushing that demand. And once that point gets to be a price, that more and more of that will sell south of Klondike. But what's their opinion of having that type of growth?
Well, I can we've probably already answered that by the permits that you approved tonight. The board is spending, I think, in the sum of 27 million. So they're investing in tomorrow. So at some point, you have to generate the money to pay the loan. So without really saying much more than that, I think that their support of these projects is your answer.
Yeah, because I too am just old enough to remember when I was a kid drinking from our well, and it had a bunch of them black floaty dirt particles in it, and it came along that the rural water was going to come. And this is a far cry from what the original intent of rural water systems were, at least in this area. So it's definitely changed its perspective and had to change with as the area changed.
Yeah, the quality of water that we're gonna produce after we build this new plant is gonna be very, very similar to that of Lewis and Clark. We're gonna be removing all the minerals, the iron and manganese, the nuisance minerals that we deal with all the time, so.
So to kind of piggyback on what Commissioner Poppins was asking, we continually, I think our board has seen a uptick in requests for commercial and industrial type businesses outside of the municipalities in the rural area that you folks would most likely be servicing. And then on top of that, residents, right? And so with your current system, the way it is right now, I mean, do you feel like you can handle a lot of that type of stuff in and amongst along Highway 18 and along the interstate exits and those types of places, or will it require huge infrastructure improvements? Or I guess from our standpoint, I mean, that's one thing we'd struggle with is like, if we rezone those properties and allow those types of uses in the rural area, Are we crippling a municipality like South Lincoln Rural Water to be able to service that in the future?
No, no.
Okay.
I want to expand on that a little bit. As these, we'll take the dairy, for instance. Everybody knows the dairy, and they've become a great partner with us, and we sell all their water to them. When we take a look back 6 years ago, when they came online, they were using about 25% of what we're selling them today. So we've been able to meet everything that they have requested or that they need.
Absorbed it.
Yep, yeah. And I think the big issue that we have with building a rural water system is knowing where they put it and how we manage to get the water there based on their needs. That's our major problem.
So with that, and I know you get, like, as we're talking about this Highway 18 thing, and with the expansion of the road, and I know you guys have been doing a lot of things there, have you kind of planned, oversized, and that's ready to roll for future expansion?
That line, 2 years ago, we did a $4 million pipeline improvement, where we went by your place and down Highway 11, connected up to 18 and on the other side, and made what I call the Grand Loop. This past year, we had a 6-inch line that ran the 9 miles from interstate into Canton, that we replaced. That was a 6-inch line, and we upped it up to an 8-inch line. The flow capability of that will meet the needs of that area for a long time, because it's connected now to the plant, the water tower that you're well aware of, and it's gonna feed this whole area in here. Yeah, yeah.
Good, thanks.
Any other questions? Engineering would be more than happy to stand up here again, if you'd like to ask them any.
We'd like to hear his address one more time, if that's possible.
Thank you.
We didn't quite get that.
Yeah, we didn't get it right wrote down.
Good evening, Terry Floyd, Lincoln County Highway Department Superintendent. So, first thing that was mentioned earlier that I want to bring up and kind of go over just kind of a high-level view of is the master transportation plan that we had done back in 2019. If you have not been able to read through this document, please do go to the website. It's posted on the website. There's a lot of very useful, very good information in that came out of this study. One of the things that we use pretty regularly, and it ties in with development, a high development that's going on, especially up in the northern part of the county, is access restriction or access permission. That's one of the things that came out of the master plan and you know, giving us rules and regulations on where and when to allow access. You know, and if you get on highly traveled roads, you're shutting down access and you're combining accesses. So that's what, like I said, that's one of the really good things that came out of that for us. Traffic counts. You look back in there, they have present day counts. A lot of them were taken back in 18. This plan was finalized in 19, so these traffic numbers that are on there, they're as existing numbers, are out of date. We're 5 years old now with them. And they have future traffic counts as well. And I will tell you, I'll give you a couple examples on County Road 106 from the interstate to Louise Avenue, so a mile and a half in there. They had in 2045, counts are going to be 9,500. And we did count.
When you say 95,
9,500 a day.
a day, okay.
Yep. So
In what year again?
That was in
2045?
Which is-
2018 when this plan was devised, 2018, 2019.
Trying to stress these dates and
All right.
numbers.
So we did counts on there last year as part of the County Road 106 corridor study that we are involved with City of Harrisburg, City of Sioux Falls, and us. And we have counts about 10,500. So
We're slightly ahead of schedule.
we're ahead of schedule. And on the next segment between Louise and Western, it's the same thing, 10,000 plus. You know, so the growth up north has had a huge impact on the things that we do. Trying to maintain roads, and just trying to keep them in drivable condition.
And-
When you talk about that stretch of road, I know, I live down by there and it was a huge discussion about the roundabout when that went in. And now I think that people have driven it, that's not an issue, but I think it's just because it's something different. So like, what's your take on putting those in? Is it, do you guys like those or not like those, or?
So I will say this, as far as moving traffic, let's put them in. They're very good, very low maintenance. The only thing that affects us on those is snow and ice removal. It's kind of a tough thing to do, snow and ice removal, but otherwise, they flow traffic very well, you know.
So with that, Terry, as you're, and not to interrupt you, but, and maybe you'll address it later, but, with the, increased traffic in the northern part of the county on those county roads, what effect is that having on the county roads in the southern part of the county? I mean, is it pulling funding from one to the other, or are you able to continue with the balance of your roads, or are you finding roads that you're just, this is our focus and we gotta spend more money on them?
So a lot in that question there, but I will say this. So
This is one of those questions he wants to be
this-
very
this-
careful how he wants to answer.
This is a question I get from you, Mike. In fact, so several years ago, it's probably been 2 or 3 years ago, I had a concerned citizen come up to me, and they live down in the southern part of the county. And he was like, you know, you're spending all this money up north, you don't spend any money down south. So I went back 10 years in our records, and I compiled all the projects, whether it's bridge project, road projects, that were done south of Highway 18 and north of Highway 18, and the money is pretty evenly split.
And I'm not complaining about I mean, I think the roads in the southern part of the county are just fine. I guess the reason I asked the question and the concern that I think our board gets is, when we get requests for a rural residential development on a county road, for example, and, but there's been a lot of discussion amongst us that, you know, really, and our old comprehensive plan states it real specifically that that type of development should stay in the municipalities and work its way out versus being out here and its way in. And one of my concerns is that all of a sudden, if one of those gets approved, I just think of the added traffic, like that adds to a county road all of a sudden, and how does that look for your department? And will that, if you have a somewhat of a static budget, what effect could that possibly have? I mean, could it potentially, I'm not saying it is right now, but could it potentially force you guys into a position where you have to start to pick and choose which roads you're gonna?
I think as long as, if you had rural development, like developments, like, you know, major housing, as long as it's not that wouldn't exceed the point that it is in the northern part of the county. I mean, yeah, the additional traffic, I mean, there's gonna be some concerns there. But with everything up north, so everything up north, you have municipalities as well. So you have the city of T, you have city of Harrisburg, you know, and they're creating and generating a lot of traffic themselves.
I suppose,
And
yeah.
when we put those developments just on the outside of those, and then you're influxing all the city's traffics on our roads as well, I mean, that kind of leads to disaster for trying to plan projects and when you need them. You know, because one of the things that we find out is all this additional traffic, it doesn't help roads. You know, even if it's just, you know, if it's 10,000 cars a day, I mean, it takes a toll on the roads.
Yeah.
You know, we try to do a good job as far as getting projects lined up, up north, down south. We have a few segments up north. They're going to be worked on by next year. They'll be the last few that haven't had an overlay on them in a few years. So hopefully, we get these projects going. But again, a lot of it is how much money is going to be available, and that's basically granted through the Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing that, we've had discussion about is that, okay, if we approve this and this goes ahead and happens, and then we put a burden on the highway department and 20 years later, they're unable to maintain that road, what's that do to the 40 new residents that built their house and now they have a crappy road to get,
Right.
to get out of there on?
So-
And that's something I'm concerned about as
So
well.
one of the things that we've been doing, especially on any of the collector roads that we have, and mainly, again, it's up north.
And what's a collector road?
So basically, that's a road that, it's a road classification that the state, they have classifications on different roads. Some are collectors, some are arterial streets.
Oh, okay.
You
Got-
know,
I
so it's just the
understand now.
different
Yep,
levels
yep.
of how much traffic they
Yep.
get. On a lot of these roads up north, if we have a residential housing development that's gonna go in, we'll, depending on the size of it, we're making them do traffic studies, and if at that time, if they're required to put turn lanes in because of the traffic, then they have to do it as a developer.
Oh, that's good.
You know,
Okay, so that,
Again, that's something that came out of this master transportation plan that we had done. So if I had, let's say the dairy was gonna move an operation next to a county highway down there, they would have to do it, just because of all the traffic they're gonna have, even though it's farm vehicles, I would probably make them do it as well.
and you have that in place, based on their driveway access then?
Yes.
Do they have to do
Yep.
that in order to get their
Correct.
permit?
Correct, yep.
Okay, thanks.
So another thing that came out of this master transportation plan is we got a projects list. We got short-term, midterm, long-term projects. And there were probably over 30 plus projects in this list. And again, they're all in they're all in the plan. Totaled up over $150 million in projects.
Wow.
And when this was presented to us, we sit back and we're like, and I've had discussions with the commissioners, Board of County Commissioners about this, we need to get some of these done. How are we gonna get this? How are we gonna afford this? Just because the revenues aren't there. So a lot of projects to do. We've knocked off a few of the really small ones. We had some safety issues to take care of on a couple road segments. We did that. Here a couple years ago, we tried to do an opt-out to do a couple intersection projects up north. Unfortunately, they didn't go through. But again, they're still in the works. We can try to do them, but it's just a matter of trying to get budgeting to do that.
Terry, let me, if I may.
Yeah.
Because you hit on the word budgeting. For the last several years, when it comes to budgeting, and the commission needs to figure out how to get the auditor happy with the numbers that we have, there's one department, point blank, that has, I'm not gonna say it's discretionary, but the ability to give up something without causing, safety issues as far as sheriff's department and the other constitutional officers, and that's highway. We have, whittled away that budget every year for the last, as many years as I've been on here. It loses $1 million frequently from the, and it's not gonna say wish list, it's things that need to happen. And we are seeing, our roads unfortunately deteriorate overall. I think Terry and staff has done a great job. They've implemented new techniques on how to maintain our roads and keep them and get longer, longevity out of them. But the reality is we're going backwards. People may not like to hear it, but we are. And overall, we're going backwards. And a lot of it has to do, yes, absolutely, the traffic counts. We're way ahead in our counts for traffic, but we're way back in our budget we're $104 million of stuff and that's not new roads. That's mostly just maintaining,
we
make
got.
him safer, those types of things. It's not taking Sundowner and paving that. That's not in that $104 million. That's a whole different topic that goes, so as you're talking about opening up developments out in the rural areas, you know, I would like, there's many roads up Sundowner and such, tall grass. I would like those to be hard surface roads. Who's gonna pay for them? Who's gonna maintain them? Cause it takes tremendous amount of money. And every time you either do commercial or residential out in those rural areas, you're getting into those collector roads that should be improved and nobody's improving them. And those collector roads can be township roads, which is outside our jurisdiction, and townships don't have the funds to do it. So that's what I still will urge caution as we talk about our comprehensive plan, is to understand the impacts of change out in the rural area has. We get tremendous pressure just from the municipalities changing, let alone more developments coming. So,
I will say, I think the last probably 4 years, again, going off traffic models from City of Sioux Falls, a lot of their models are showing, you know, we always talk about east-west corridors needing capacity, you know, but probably about right after our transportation plan was done, they started to kind of change a little bit into north-south corridors. They said, okay, Harrisburg is growing, T is growing, we need to do something about north-south corridors. And DOT has Highway 11, DOT has Highway 115, Minnesota Avenue, county has Cliff Avenue and Louise Avenue. And then if you go over by T, we have 111 over there. Well, those are the only three. Well, there's a lot of miles in between from Harrisburg to T that are township roads, you know, I mean, and we're experiencing this now. I mean, this is just an issue we're dealing with now is Southeastern. You know, with 85th Street closed, 85th and Cliff closed. You got, Harrisburg got a bunch of streets closed down there. You know, so everybody's starting to go over Southeastern. So we had Southeastern had traffic counts done last year, 1,500 a day. 1,500 a day on a gravel township road. Now, I will say.
and we're not talking about the county gravels that we have south.
Correct.
Unfortunately, these roads are beat up.
Saying they're crumbling.
So the standard
Already.
is, jeez. So the standard is, if it's 250 ADT or more, it should be a paved road. And we have 1,500 on Southeastern Drive
That
last
was
year.
last year, yeah.
So we took counts because of the road closures this year, and I got close to 2,400 on the northbound, north of 106 Southeastern. And we got about 2,000 on the south. I mean, and it's like, so at some point, we or somebody needs to step in and do something with those. But again, there's just no money. There's the revenue.
Right.
You know, I mean, but so to me, that's one of the trending things. You know, is north-south corridors. And again, I think it's confined Highway 11 on the east side. You know, maybe even Sycamore a mile east or west of that. But it goes all the way over to T. I mean, any north-south corridor, Tallgrass, Western Avenue, and predominantly you could probably go down to County Road 110 with any of them. You know,
Which is which road?
which is going to be the Harrisburg Road.
Oh,
Harrisburg
yeah.
exit. So,
Okay.
costs. As everybody knows, costs have increased dramatically post-COVID. I mean, in years past, I was able to do tear out 2 bridges and put in 2 box culverts for about $600,000. Last year, we had a bid on one, 1.1 million
Just on one
for 2 structures.
for two, so it basically doubled, yeah.
Basically doubled. Yep. I mean, and again, that's across the board, all construction costs, 30 to 45% increase across the board. You know, so now we're getting into all this additional traffic, still got to do maintenance on the roads, but I'm getting the same amount of money that I normally get, but it's got to go further, you know, so. Other issues, all this growth is causing is jurisdictional issues, and the township growth. So rural, and you know this, rural development is wreaking havoc on the township roads. I mean, because again, these township roads were not meant to take that kind of traffic. And these townships, it's pretty much in Springdale and Delapre Township, I mean, they get a lot of money in taxes every year, and they do what they can. They're out there magging, they're graveling, they're magging, to try to keep these roads tied together so they won't, get all chucked up after a day of traffic, So they're doing a decent job trying to hold it together, but,
But they can't handle a heck of a lot more.
no.
It doesn't look like to me.
And again, 4 years ago when I did counts on Southeastern, they had like 600 or 700 a day, and I'm like, man, somebody's got to do something. This is crazy. I mean, here we are 3 years later, and now we're at 1,500 to 2,000.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's wild.
county roads, the additional traffic is creating the need for turn lanes, slower speed limits, and other traffic control devices, probably mainly, flashing lights, flashing stop signs, flashing signs of any sorts to get people's attention. And maybe the addition of adding four-way stops in intersections where there's not. This is all from rural development. Township roads, especially in the northern part, again, near municipalities, especially going to Sioux Falls, like I said, minimum of 500 a day, up to 1,500 to 2,400 a day, ADT.
So do you have any concern, and maybe Commissioner Poppins can speak on this, you guys have maybe thought about it, but what happens if Delapre Township or Springdale Township just can't service those roads anymore? Does it, or what if they can't get a supervisor? What if they can't get people to be supervisors anymore? They don't wanna run their township. Do they just hand it over to the county, and does it become the county's problem? I think.
We kind of need to know.
The belief is out there that it's inevitable that some of the townships will start to
Default to the county?
default to the county, point blank. Trying to find operators to run maintainers,
Yeah.
finding people willing to serve as supervisors.
Yep.
There's multiple things that are coming that lead us to believe that the day's coming that it's gonna happen. It's happened in other counties. It has not happened as of yet in Lincoln County. We have tried to prepare for it by having a highway shop and a facility that hopefully can be equipped down the road with additional equipment and such. What townships do need to understand is that does not mean that's gonna lower their taxes by any means.
No.
But it may become an inevitable situation because, as you said, finding individuals willing to serve as supervisors and then or hiring individuals to run equipment that are trained. Because this equipment, the good old days of having a wheel and joystick or levers to pull for the motor grader, although there still can get them, it's more of a joystick situation. And you've got to be skilled at running those things and trained and to do a proper job because these roads are getting beat up and you cannot have somebody out there that does not know what they're doing and causing more harm than good. None of us want it to happen, Terry, but we've had conversations that we believe the day is coming. We just don't know when it'll be.
Yeah. So I guess we can't necessarily say you're prepared for it, but you're aware of it, that
We're concerned.
that this could happen.
I would agree with Mike that I think there is a real concern about that. And I would almost, I don't know, part of me says I would be more worried about townships down south, just because there's really nobody down there to be an operator, nobody wants to serve.
Yeah,
it's very
we're
tough.
just fortunate that we have a retired county person that knows how to run one, runs one for our township in Fairview, and But if Dale wasn't around, I don't know that we could find somebody, you know? Yeah, it's tough.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, I mean, if I get to take them over, then I get to find people to try to run them.
Yeah.
And get them
Well,
trained.
and
so.
that's the interesting part, because then, I mean, you can't just hire a part-time person at $25 an hour to come, at $5,000 a year to come run it when it needs to be done. I mean, you kinda need a full-time person, and you gotta find something for them to do the rest of the time then, right? And so we have that, you know, but when you need them, you're gonna need them, and
Right.
that's, so I think about that too, especially as we get more,
The biggest.
acreages and things like that on these township roads, and their demand to get pushed out with snow, and they want a better road and this and that, you know.
The days of when I was a young kid, a few days ago, quite over there. You know, it was not unheard of to understand that you might be locked up in your home, or doing chores at least, I should say, for 2 or 3 days and not have a maintainer go by and a big pile of snow. And the demands of the public say, it's done snowing, I need to go.
Yep. Even while it's snowing, maybe. I
While
gotta
it's
go.
going. So it's a change of philosophy, what it's like to live in the country, from then until now, so.
Yeah, I would say we have had internal discussions regarding that issue. And basically, it's revolving around how much additional staff would we need to do,
Yeah.
you know, because we would still have what we have now to take care of.
Well, and I just know what like our township's budget is for the year, and if you had to hire one full-time person to absorb Highland Township, there wouldn't be enough money there to do it, let alone the pay for the gravel and everything else that goes along. Because when you inherit the township, if that would happen, let's say, you also inherit their budget, but their budget isn't very big. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yep. So,
Oh, we do know what you're saying.
Yeah.
We've, like I said, we definitely are not gonna be blindsided by it. We're hoping that townships can find a mechanism to stay operating. I think they do the best job, again, locally with their neighbors, understanding their roads specifically to their circumstance and what their residents wanna pay for. Anytime that road comes under the county's jurisdiction, I'm not gonna guarantee anybody's gonna be any happier.
No, yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think it's, the way the system is best. And I think one of the things that we've done good with, Toby's done in the planning commission, is that we've really, in the last couple of years, taken the townships into consideration when we do any of these types of things, so that we try to make it not as big a burden on them as try to make it the minimal amount of burden, so that it does make it easier for them. Yeah, so, anyway, thanks.
all right, so I'm gonna wrap up with just kind of our inventory. And again, a lot of this information is available on the website. But the county is responsible. We have about 283 miles of county paved road that we are responsible for, and about 44 miles of county gravel that we're responsible for. We also have about 154 bridges now that we are responsible for as well. So state law is bridges considered anything 20-foot opening or larger. So, so earlier today, I was at that stakeholders meeting up in Harrisburg, and I think for the public, I think one of the big misconceptions about county roads is somebody lives on a township road and they call into my office and they're like, hey, you need to do some of my road. There's this hole here. It's never been bladed for 3 weeks or whatever. And it's like, well, where are you at? Well, it's just their road water, and it's a township road. And it's like, well, that's a township road. You have to call it township. Well, it's in Lincoln County. And I said, yes, it is, but it's not my jurisdiction. You know, so there's a huge difference. And again, I think, you know, to me, you know, I take a little hit. I did in this questionnaire, the first questionnaire they had out, you know, how do you like your roads? What are your roads like? And roads was like number 2 behind the taxes as what's negative about Lincoln County. And I'm like, so it can be township road, it could be state road, it could be municipality road.
Right,
Or it
yeah.
could be mine. I mean, there's a lot of roads. So I mean, I try not to take that to heart, but, you know, when we had this master plan done, we had a survey done of our roads. IMS, they came down and did radar shooting through the roads and checked. And it pegged out, our RPI on it was like a 76. And that was in 2019 when they went and tested all of our roads, and that was the spring we had the flooding. And that was after one of the floods, but we had horrible road breakups, and I'm like, holy crap, we had a 76. Our roads are really good condition, our paved roads, you know. So trying to keep ahead of that on the curve, you know, but, you know, again, a lot of budget constraints. Like Mike said, it's getting cut. A lot of things, a lot of maintenance, asphalt maintenance isn't being done that should be. You know, that's unfortunate, so.
Well, I travel on a lot of your roads and they're really good, so I think you guys do an awful good job.
Well, thank you. Are there any other questions for me? Did I cover?
Terry, that was great. Appreciate it.
All right.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Terry, can you explain again the average daily traffic count of what is the threshold for when the county wants to see it paved, from gravel to paved? I thought that was a really point.
So in our master transportation plan, there's a section in there where it talks about traffic counts, and on a gravel road, if it exceeds 250 ADT, this should be a paved road.
Wow.
So, and I will say this, so several years ago, Commissioner Poppins had brought to me, he's like, well, we have some paved roads that don't live up to that number, and you're right, we don't. And I had about 34 miles of road, and it's primarily down south that doesn't get 250 a day. And we're like, well, maybe we stop doing maintenance on this and see what happens, you know? I mean, so that's kind of, it's kind of a flip side, you know? Where,
Excuse me, something's going to have to give eventually, because we can't have the traffic counts of 2,500 on township gravel roads
Correct.
for safety reasons, and hard surface roads under 250. There has to be a hard decision that's gonna come. I don't know if it's next year, the year after, 10 years, but somewhere that decision's gonna have to be made, and someone's gonna, you know, take the beating for it, because it's a safety issue,
Yeah.
period.
Do you guys have a rough idea? So of those gravel roads that you have over or 250 or above, do you know roughly how many miles that is?
so none of those are my gravels.
They're all
None-
townships,
they're
yeah,
all
but just.
township gravel. How many?
How
So-
many, rough idea?
All right, so, you had me do this too. There's probably, I think I had pegged out around T in Harrisburg. Did I have like 11 or 13 miles
Okay.
back?
So it's a
But
fair
again,
bit
that was
then.
like four
That-
years ago.
That's the ones we just checked.
Yeah,
There could be,
Yeah.
there's a road, I can think of a couple roads that we didn't even look at.
Correct.
That have, just by knowledge, you know, they're over 250.
Yeah.
We didn't
So it's
even wanna.
just roughly 15 to 20 miles roughly?
yeah,
That-
well, it's probably 12 to, maybe 12 to 15. I
12 to
thought it was like
15.
12,
That
13.
are well over those 2,000 kind of number counts
Yeah.
that are spooky.
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, and you know, because you got, look at, if you, like I said, if you look at Southeastern, you got 4 miles of Southeastern.
Yeah.
You know, you had 2 miles of Western Avenue, you know, 3.5 miles of tall grass. Sundowner, you got 2 miles, 2.5, 3 miles of Sundowner. You know, and again, those are predominantly north-south corridors.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there were a couple of east-west corridors, 272nd, I think, was one. I think T has paved one of that miles now, that's by their lagoons, that mile's done, but
Oh,
Terry, I think one thing that would be pertinent to maybe mention of the Highway 100 and what that may or may not do to traffic on certain roads. The one thing it's not gonna do is eliminate the traffic. It may shift it to different roads. But the growth is going to be between 100 and 85th Street interchange. I think it's going to be mind-boggling how the growth is going to be in the next 10 to 20 years.
yeah, that, you bring up a good point. So the, Sioux Falls is doing traffic models on, again, corridor on 106. And they're saying from when Veterans Parkway opens, the counts on County Road 106, basically from Highway 11 to Louise Avenue, are gonna be cut in half.
Because it'll all shift.
Yep, everything is gonna shift up to South Veterans.
But that's until that area starts filling in, and then those numbers will creeping up as the
Yeah,
other grows.
so we even have some counts, and again, this is from the 106 corridor study we're all working on. Counts there about out to 2050, I believe, you're still looking at high, maybe 6,000 on a segment or two. You know, but I mean, again, those are the segments now that are 10,500. You know, so it's a major influx of traffic. I mean, a lot of it gets shifted, but yeah,
Whose road is Veterans Parkway gonna be?
State,
the city, I think. City,
Or
Sioux
city?
Falls. Yeah,
City Sioux Falls State.
yeah. So, anything else?
No, thanks, Terry. Well,
Thank
not
you.
from me anyway, I guess.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Katie Kemet from Stantec. I'm going to go through just a couple of slides showing some data pertinent to the comprehensive plan. I think several of you have seen this before, but this is population in Lincoln County over the past several decades. And you can see it's pretty much skyrocketed since 2000 and has already surpassed what the 2005 comprehensive plan predicted for the 2025 population of Lincoln County. As was mentioned earlier, there is a community survey out there that Stantec put together for the county. It is available on the Lincoln County website. And this is a screenshot from, I think, Friday, so it should be on the front page still. If you haven't had a chance to take the survey, we would love it if you did. And I'm gonna walk through just a couple preliminary results from this survey. So it opened in late March, and since then we've had, as of Friday, we've had 352 responses. And just highlighting a couple of questions that are in the survey. These are results from what are the positive things about living in Lincoln County. I'll read this graphic from top to bottom just because the type is a little small. Property tax rate, rural character, low crime, limited development pressure and growth, road quality, education quality, healthcare quality, employment opportunities, housing options and affordability, recreational opportunities and open spaces, emergency and sheriff services, general county government services, and other. And this question provided a comment box for people to elaborate on how they answered the question. And we just pulled out some themes here that we saw in multiple comments. And those are people think that proximity to Sioux Falls is a positive thing about Lincoln County and recreational opportunities like the state parks and lakes within the county. Moving to the second question, what are the negative things about living in Lincoln County? Again, I'll read from top to bottom. Property tax rate comes out as number one. Too much development pressure and growth, high crime, road quality, education quality, healthcare quality, employment opportunities, housing options and affordability, recreational opportunities and open spaces, emergency and sheriff services, land use conflicts, and other. And a couple comments that we've pulled out from this question are the price of utilities, particularly water, property taxes, and road quality and ice and snow removal from roads. And just in general, so that was just two questions that were in the survey, but there's a whole suite of them. So some takeaways that we have from this phase one community survey are people think taxes are too high, roads need improvement, cost of water is too high. People appreciate the rural lifestyle in Lincoln County. Urban and suburban folks want restaurants, jobs, and business opportunities. There's a desire for bike and recreational trails, as well as parks and natural areas, things for kids and seniors to do. Negative toward commissioners, there was a little bit of sentiment there. Some specific land use concerns on the carbon pipeline, Spring Creek Golf Course, feedlot, and water quality issues. And that most people want some sort of managed growth, either more of it, less of it, and have opinions about where it should be and not. So we will be closing this phase 1 survey sometime within the next couple of weeks prior to Memorial Day. So again, please take it if you haven't had a chance to yet. And then a second survey will be made available at the same time. And the purpose of that second survey is to dive a little deeper into the trends that came out of the first survey and hopefully get some input to guide goals, policies, and objectives that will end up in the comprehensive plan update. Here is a QR code to the first survey and then the URL to the first survey below. And we can pull this up at the end of the meeting if needed. Okay.
So I got a couple of questions about that survey. So when they said that there was like 40, I couldn't see it on my, I can't remember what it was on my screen, like 44,000 people, and we got a very small percentage of that actually responded to the survey. What's our goal to get that higher than that? I mean, is there a goal that you want to have for responses to this thing?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, no, I mean, there really isn't a goal. It's about, it is out on the county website. My understanding is county staff is engaging with folks to be aware that it's out there. It really is driven towards, like tonight, Planning Commission is recorded, county board is recorded, people, you're not compelled to take the survey. And then I'll just add to the survey itself, the questions in themselves are, I wouldn't say generally vague or generally vanilla. I mean, again, as Terry said, when we talk about quality of roads, well, again, you don't know, we intentionally wrote it anonymous, or set it up anonymously, so people can say, so you don't know if they're literally, if someone is living in the city of Sioux Falls, they can take, where they are is gonna have an opinion.
No, I
or
just was
an influence.
curious to see if there was, a goal that you wanted to have a certain percentage of the population.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great if we did a commercial with Toby out there,
Yeah.
be on
advocating
WNEX.
for the survey and put that on the news.
Put you on
That'd be-
Kello. Yeah,
Yep.
probably not a bad idea,
I got a connection for you.
yeah.
Yeah, we can.
And I will add for the survey itself, I think what's going to be interesting is what we did mention here is when we get that second survey online, we're going to then publish also the results of this first survey. You saw some of those folks at the stakeholder meeting today, saw much more of the results, really kind of dove into that, and that helped facilitate some discussion. What's going to be interesting, I think, for folks will see when we have those of that, again, the survey information is nice, but really the trends of what people are saying. It's about taking the question, taking a moment to think about it, giving an answer, and then there's the comment section. That's where we can really elicit, good responses. Why? Because it all comes down to then helping the county board staff, the planning commission, the stakeholders then see what is, at least as you were saying, the snapshot of those who surveyed, what are their thoughts, and how does that drive goals, policies, and objectives that then we're talking about. Rural water, it's expensive. Transportation, it's expensive. The decisions you make can be expensive depending on how it's going to be impacted long time. That's all part of this.
I can almost guarantee you the water and sewer high prices is from Harrisburg. I can just about almost guarantee that. Just putting that out there.
So with that, I just want to say for next steps for public engagement, Kate and myself will be out here again in mid-June. We're going to be back in front of the key stakeholders again, like we had this morning. I think it was a pretty good turnout. We had 15, 20 folks from the cities, some township folks, the representatives, as Toby said earlier. Also, perhaps if we have enough information, I'll come back to you again in a month, because again, I think show again, saw some of those results, the survey again, and also where we are with that second survey. Then we could perhaps have another working session with you to get into some of the actual existing goals, some of the policies, some of the objectives. We did walk through some of those goals this morning, but knowing our intent is to have some paper maps to kind of walk through and get your thoughts as the planning commission over what are the things you see, mark up in some maps. Because ultimately, the goal of this is to get, I mean, it is an update to the comprehensive plan. In my opinion, the real fundamental things are the goals, policies, objectives, I keep saying, and then also a future land use map. And that future land use map is what does, through the surveys, through staff, through the commission, what do you see? How do you really envision Lincoln County to be moving ahead? And then use that as a guide with the comprehensive plan to then help make decisions on conditional use permits, the county board and whatnot, so.
One question on the surveys, are people identifying themselves whether they're in the municipality or in a rural area, or is that possible to do?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner, no, intentionally, we did them anonymously.
Okay.
We initially, and that's why I will say, when you get those comments back, because it was anonymous, there are some that are a little colorful. So now we are editing those down, and then we're gonna have a disclaimer, be courteous and respectful of folks. So,
But now into your next survey, is there a way to peel that apart so we know? Because in the rural area, it might be scored completely different than in the city of Harrisburg or the southern part of Sioux Falls, and those are two really different spots. I don't know if that's important to you guys, or.
yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner, I don't have a good answer. I think that's something we can share with staff to see how to call that out. Because again,
Okay.
you can sort that out, but again, if it's, then we wouldn't have it anonymous. I'd want to let people know, like where do you live? And then we can ask, specifically, and then folks can, the thing is, we wanted to elicit, make sure we got a response from folks.
Yeah.
Now we got a response. in
No,
the
I
second
think that's
question.
good, but it would, from our standpoint, it'd be interesting to know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We talked about a lot of times, that Highway 18 is kind of the dividing line, is, to know where we're getting these. And that's why I was going out with these numbers before, because, you're getting just such a minute part of the population. I mean, you walk into Lewis down at 694 Lee and ask somebody, what do you think of the roads in Lincoln County? Everybody else will tell you, well, they're all terrible. And if you ask them how many people took the survey, none of them are gonna do that. So it's just, it's, just disappointed that we're trying to do this, and then, to try and get the community involvement.
Yeah.
It's not there.
And I will say, Madam Chair and Commissioner, for that next wave of engagement with key stakeholders in June, depending on the timing, we do intend for that is have at least one full day of, I wouldn't call it speed dating, but I'd like to have individual half-hour meetings with individual cities, individual townships, to then elicit that response to understand what their concerns are.
Yeah.
But I mean, as you see the survey results, I think it shouldn't surprise you. It lines up, I think, what most people see wherever you are in the county. I mean, rural folks have rural issues, urbanized folks have urban issues, and people drive around. It's not like they're living in a, cardboard box. They know what's going on, so. Anyway, with that, thank you. I think if we're fine, we're gonna take a little break, set up our maps, and we can get around them and kind of walk and talk through that, and perhaps we'll try to bring some of the goals up over the different presentations that we can walk together. So with that,
Madam
thank you.
Chair, I'm going to make one comment while he's starting to set up that. One thing that everyone needs to remember is the huge difference between a county and a municipality is municipality is able to collect a sales tax, which goes a long ways to paying for infrastructure. County, as of to date, there have been attempts to find additional funding through the state. We have not gained that. So everything is on the tax burden of the property owner. We need some assistance if we're gonna continue to grow like this. Hopefully outside of the burden of the taxpayer of the county, so. Ask your representatives to truly consider, no one wants to say no new taxes. It's not new tax, it's just shifting of the payment, more equitably to everyone that's using these roads, so my campaign speech there, so, thank you, everyone.
Maybe you should be on the commercial way.
And no, that didn't go well last time.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn. Scott?
Second instead.
All in favor? We'll just do
Aye.
it that way. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.